welcome everybody. October 19th edition of Webb Weekly Live, and it's just amazing, Steph, how time just flies.
I know, we're almost through the fall. It's going to get cold. I had to turn my heat on. I'm not happy about it.
The leaves are changing. It's beautiful out. The Mummers Parade was unbelievable,
I heard that it turned out really well. We hit some of the traffic coming back. I didn't make it to the parade, but we were over the mountain, but I heard that it was really good. So
Yep, and a lot going on in our area. But hey, we got a lot going on with our show today, so we better get right to it.
Yeah, well, the cover story this week is Lou's story about Family Promise. This is a great organization that is not only helping to house homeless families in the area, but they're also helping them to get them back on their feet into other homes, and then giving them the educational tools that they need to stay in those homes. So be sure to check that out. And if you want to support them, they do have an event coming up on October 29th at Farrington Place. DJ and dancing and food and drink and charity auctions. So be sure to read all about that. Of course, our Where Are the Witches contest continues this week. So just a reminder, take the number of witches that were in last week's issue and the number that are in this week's issue, add them together, and then email me the total. Contest@webbweekly.com. Remember, 10 and under, 10 winners, big bucket full of candy and toys and goodies and stuff. So be sure to, all the details of that are in my article and on page 4.
I like when you make up those buckets and I can like sneak candy and snacks out of there, and then you like slap me on the hand and tell me to get out of the candy.
Yeah, that's why I keep making them later and later and later. So
I wondered about that.
Everybody steals all the candy.
And how many witches were in the first one? Are you going to tell?
You that.
I never have a chance at that.
I know. I'm sorry, but you have to count them. And then finally, Larry Stout has, for his County Hall Corner this week, has a great article about the county's adult probation department and the good work that they do and how hard they work. So it's a good story.
They do a good job, and there's, wow, they're overwhelmed with work.
Absolutely,
unfortunately.
they really are. They've got an amazing caseload, and they managed to keep up with all of it. So it's nice. It's an underappreciated department, so it's nice to get them a little bit of attention. So.
Absolutely. So what do you got?
I have a trivia question.
A trivia question.
Yeah, I've got a heart trivia question this
And what
week.
are we giving away?
I've got a $25 gift card to Ichiban.
Ichiban, one of my favorite places.
Yeah, mine too. So in honor of all of the witches in the paper and us almost hitting Halloween, trivia question this week. In Shakespeare's play Macbeth, in the double toil and trouble scene, what is the last ingredient that goes in the cauldron? So one more time, in the Shakespeare play Macbeth, in the double toil and trouble scene, what is the last ingredient that the witches put in the cauldron? It's a tough one this week.
I do not know that. Do you know why I don't know that? Oh, well, I don't know that because I only ever read Cliff Notes back in my day, and that wasn't in there. So great question, and I actually probably could have guessed the answer.
So answer below. First person to answer wins the $25 gift card to Ichiban.
Wonderful. And we're going to take a commercial break here for the Fairfield Auto Group, and Steph and I will be right back.
Over 30 years, one family of dealerships has grown to include 14 brands at 8 locations on an unyielding commitment to hometown values and unrivaled service, selection, and customer satisfaction for 30 years. Fairfield. For fair deals. You're gonna love us.
And we're back, and we're going to take things on a bit of a serious note now. The past few weeks, we've been going over some of the problems and issues and solutions in regards to the heroin epidemic, not just in our city or our county, but across the country. And today's guests, we're going to sit down with County Coroner Charles Kiessling, and then we have another guest, Carolyn Miele, who's going to talk to us. But this is a really serious problem, and I think that this is going to be a very serious interview, but it's going to have a lot of good information, and I think that it's important information to get out there.
And I appreciate, Steph, the effort you made in the articles you've done in the Webb Weekly, but also we've set up the guests, and we've had a positive plan on how to approach different folks that deal with heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will be a very eye-opening segment for most people. And I sit back and I think about all the problems in our country that need to be dealt with. And then I come to our area right here. And the effect heroin is having on a small community like ours, it taxes every resource we have, from police to the coroner,
Right. Yeah.
to no matter where you look, there is efforts being put forth. Obviously, it taxes our budgets and our finances, but when it comes to heroin and the effect it's having on people's life, that's really the most, I should say, the least important thing. Anyway, so.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and we're gonna come back with the county coroner. Stay tuned. It should be a good segment for us.
And 30 years down at Fairfield Auto Group, they're having a big celebration, and you can save on brand new Explorers, brand new F-150 trucks. Get down and see Rick Quigley and the gang, and we'll be back.
For over 30 years, Fairfield Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram has had an unyielding commitment to hometown values. And we know how important those are to you. When you think Fairfield, you think unrivaled service. And of course, it's where Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Rams cost less. Check out deals like this during the celebration event and Ram Power Days event. Fairfield for fair deals. Fairfield, you're gonna love us.
And Steph and I are at downtown Williamsport with County Coroner Charles Kiessling. Thanks for having us down.
Well, thanks for coming.
A lot we could talk about here today, and I want to compliment you first. I say we're very blessed to have you as coroner, and you do so much reaching out to children, safety programs. We just did this car seat stuff,
Yeah.
and I heard that went over real
That
big.
went over really well. We had, I think, 28 seats were taken out of service, so that's good.
And we were glad we could help you with that last week. And Burger King would give a shout out to them. They participate. You always seem to have a lot of people participating. But I want to come back and talk about all that you do as coroner and another show. And we'll talk about you being a nurse on Night
Okay.
Flight and on Life Flight. And you're a busy guy.
Yeah, it keeps me out of trouble.
But today I think the focus needs to be on heroin.
Yeah.
It's the number one problem here in Lycoming County, number one problem in our country, and we've devoted time. Steph's been very good doing investigation and reporting, and we want to be involved and educate the public, and that brings us down here, and we're glad you have us. So,
Thanks.
from the coroner's perspective, why don't you give us an overview of the heroin epidemic?
We have had a significant number of deaths over the last 2-3 years. 2015, we had 25 deaths from drug-related deaths, and so far this year, we've already had 29 for the year. So the numbers just keep escalating. Despite law enforcement's efforts and trying to get the drugs off the streets. It's a mixture of prescription drugs, it's a mixture along with heroin.
Opioids,
opioids
that we
you
hear,
know,
and
yeah.
they're all bad.
They're all bad,
Okay.
all bad. And then, in combination, we've investigated 16 suicides this year, and when you sometimes look into those issues, there's, can be drug and alcohol issues that lead to those as well. So the numbers are continuing to increase every year, and it's
the collateral
it's tragic.
damage. The collateral damage from heroin and drug addiction or alcohol addiction just doesn't end, it seems.
No, it sure does not.
So, Steph, you've had a lot of experience on this issue.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research over the last couple of years, and I'm a firm believer in education. Some people don't always like the way that I choose to help with the education. I tend to be a little blunt and a little straightforward, and I think in the long term that's better for everyone. It's difficult to have these conversations with your kids and with your family, but they're so important.
And I ask her to be blunt, and I don't think we have time. I think the problem's to the point where we don't have time to sugarcoat.
No,
So-
absolutely.
It's true, and you can never be overly educated. The more you know about heroin and its side effects and how it's used, you're more likely to see the signs and the symptoms in front of you. And if it helps to save one person's life, then I'm okay with not everyone being happy about it, but it works. And and I know that you feel that prevention is really the key.
That's the key. I mean, there's no doubt that we have to focus on the prevention. The number of folks that actually get through rehabilitation it's so difficult. These people, once they become addicted, they're addicted for life in many cases, and it's extremely sad to say, but we're seeing the numbers. People are dying on a regular basis because of the opioid addiction. So we've got to get out in the schools, educate parents, grandparents. If you've got prescription drugs anywhere in your house, opiates and other prescriptions, just because a doctor prescribes them does not mean they're safe. They're only safe to use if it's prescribed for you. We're picking up, when we go into these scenes, we're picking up prescription medications that don't belong to the deceased. They chose to mix them up. They're mixing them with opiates, benzos. These medications have tremendous respiratory depressant effects. And if a person starts, popping pills, it knocks out their ability to breathe. And unfortunately, if no one's there, when it happens, they die. And so we've got to, push the education. The heroin, we can't arrest, and I've heard this from law enforcement and the district attorney, we can't arrest our way out of this. I realize that, but we can't not arrest either.
Right.
We have to get the drug dealers off the streets to save our young people. Because most of these people that die are from 21 to 35 years of age, occasionally older, but they're young people that have them.
What can you tell parents? And again, let's talk about parents. A child's always your child. So when we're talking about children, we need to educate from a very young age up. But heroin affects families, and if your child's 50, he's still your child or she's your child.
Yeah.
And it just, I have people reach out to me asking for help with this issue. But what can a person look for that are the early signs that, hey, I might have a problem with my son or daughter and heroin or a opioid or whatever?
Yeah. Well, keeping tab, a lot of times the addiction can start by medicine cabinets.
Okay.
Medications start disappearing. Maybe a child starts popping the pills, experimenting with these medicines. They really need to be secured. If there's changes in behavior of the child, they just seem to be preoccupied with other things and not focused on family dealings and school activities, and they start to drift off away from what they used to be. Certainly it's worth asking and be straightforward. Is there something here that's bothering you? Is there, what's going on?
And then they'll never want to answer you.
They'll never want to answer you. Yeah, they'll never want to answer you.
Because even if it isn't that, trying to get answers out of my kids about simple things are difficult.
Yeah, but it's something that's got to be asked. We got to get these, identify these folks.
Let me take that question the next step, because I said about they're always your child until the day you leave the earth.
Yeah.
How about older kids? How about you have a 25-year-old? What do you look for with an older person?
Well, again, maybe they're not working. Suddenly they're just calling off work. They're very lackadaisical about things that should be important to them. And you certainly start to have to
Withdrawing from the family.
Withdrawing from the family.
Needing money.
Needing money, because a lot of times this is not a cheap venture. If they have to start buying, if they're pulling from the medicine cabinet, that's one thing. If they're going out buying prescription drugs, which
it's misleading. You hear that heroin is, it's just $10 a bag. Well, that may be true until you're reached a point where you need 10 or 12 bags a day to feed your habit. And on a quick side note about the medicines in your medicine cabinet, please don't forget that there are med return receptacles all over the county, in the sheriff's departments, in the police departments. I believe they're in the hospital. Also, take those medications, get them out of your house. If they're not in use anymore, you don't need to have them. Take them and put them someplace safe where they're disposed of properly.
And they can even bring them in here. We dispose of medications on a regular basis, because when we go out to death scenes, we bring them in, we inventory them, and then we dispose of them as well. So it's another, area if it's more convenient.
And you see out to death scenes, you see the worst, you see the place nobody ever wants to be in. And then you have the unfortunate, you understand what happens with the family from that point on.
Absolutely.
Do you want to just touch on base to somebody that might be using, or somebody that might have a problem, or somebody that might need help? Give them an understanding of how they need to get a little help, or come straight and
Yeah, they need to get, whether it's going to the emergency room or contacting West Branch Drug and Alcohol, whatever mechanisms they need to get the help they need to follow through. I know there's a push for Narcan out in the community, and that definitely saves lives. As a nurse, I've given it hundreds of times, but unfortunately, if it's not there and it delivered in a timely manner, it may not work. And when you start looking at heroin being laced with carfentanil and W18 and all these synthetic opioids, there's no guarantee that Narcan's going to work. So it may be that it almost seems like could be a false sense of security. It's a safety net made out of tissue paper, and so it's there. And law enforcement, some of the agencies are carrying it, state police are, EMS personnel carry it. They certainly can save lives with it, but you can't count on it completely, because there's so many variables that affect whether that's going to work or not.
Well, and it doesn't
So-
address the core
Issue.
addiction
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
It'll help you now, but it's not going to keep you from going out and finding more heroin the next day.
Right.
So it really needs to be about the rehab programs and the prevention programs. And the fact is, kids are trying drugs earlier and earlier and younger, so that education needs to start very young.
Yes, absolutely. We've got to get into
it's a different world. I mean, with technology comes the opportunity for kids to learn about so much more and have be exposed to so much. And no matter how safe you are as a parent to trying to prevent them from seeing technology, it just doesn't work, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But parents, I mean, heroin rips families apart, drug addiction, alcohol. But the heroin issue really seems to be affecting different people in different ways. But Carolyn Miele, Carolyn Bigelow, known her my whole life, tragic story. She's reached out a little bit to me and also to you. Do you want to fill us in a little bit about that? And then,
Carolyn and I go way back. She worked with my wife in the OB department at the hospital, and it's tragic situation, with our son Zach. Unfortunately, in February this year, we got called to her home, and and we had talked earlier, late last year, about maybe trying to talk to Zach, and because of his on again, off again problems with addiction, and unfortunately, I never got around to having that conversation. So again, it's so important that we have these conversations, get people to, get into treatment, so
absolutely.
that we don't have these tragedies continuing to.
And I've coached Carolyn's other son, Connor, in both football and baseball, and been around the family and around Zach. And you never think that people you're going to be around are going to suffer a tragedy. But the truth is, it goes on in almost every family at some level. There's people within my extended family that are battling heroin addiction right now. And you hear about it, but you don't want to give into the severity of it.
Right.
And then, like you said, you never had the opportunity. Then it reaches the level of when you're called to the scene, and you just think, oh my gosh, this young man. And we can't do enough to educate right now or to bring the attention to the situation. And listen, folks, you need to do everything you can to talk about it, to reach out, to try to get a hold of this situation, because it's affecting so many families. Steph, you brought
Um,
to Carolyn had done a. Go ahead, I'll leave you explain.
A few weeks ago, I lost a family member to an overdose. And shortly after that, someone had sent me a video that Carolyn had done. And it's a very simple but powerful video where she tells the story of her son and his history and how losing him has affected. And I'm not really going to say much more about it. I think that the best thing we can do is just go straight to the video, and then we're going to come back and sit down with Carolyn and talk to her about her experience. So we're going to go to that video now, and there's really not, we'll just go to the video.
Zachary died of a heroin overdose at the age of 27 in February. It's really affected my life, my children's life. I have 5 other children. So we're all grieving the loss of my son. It comes in all households. It's everywhere. And, 99% of people are going to know somebody that has a heroin or a drug problem. And he started not doing well at school, hanging around with the wrong crowd of kids, not being rebellious at home, not listening, not wanting to go to school. We utilize West Branch Drug and Alcohol, Crossroads Counseling, and then I had him arrested from my house so that I could get him into rehab. And so then he went to a White Deer facility for inpatient rehab. He hadn't used in 2.5 years when he used, and that was the last time. Since I lost Zachary, I joined a support group for parents who have lost their children, not necessarily from a drug overdose, but just for parents who have lost their children. And then also in October, they're starting a support group in the area called GRASS. And GRASS is just for people who have lost a loved one to an addiction. If you know of anybody that you think is using drugs, whether it's heroin or marijuana or cocaine or anything, I highly recommend that you just be real honest with them, and ask them, talk to them, and be straightforward with them about it, because what they're doing with drugs today is not the same 30 years ago or 20 years ago. You can't stop somebody from using drugs unless they really want to stop, but you can make somebody else aware or make them aware that you know, and it may help. It may save their life. Zachary was the first death by overdose to be ruled a homicide in Lycoming County, and they're still working on finding out who sold Zachary the drugs. What I would like to see changed in Williamsport is I think that they need to have a rally downtown. I think that they need to have meetings. I think they need to bring the community together and try to change what's going on here. There's way too many deaths here in Williamsport, and it doesn't seem like there's enough awareness about what's going on. There needs to be more educational programs for children and for prevention, and that's the number one thing, and that's partly why I'm here today. And Also for parents. Parents need to know the signs and symptoms if your child is using heroin or other drugs. The big thing is that marijuana is a gateway drug, and so are other drugs. It leads to cocaine, it leads to heroin, that when not enough of a high is being given, or there's peer pressure to use other drugs that lead to that. And dealers give away heroin for free so that they can get somebody hooked and they come back and buy more drugs from them. Only one-time use of heroin won't get you addicted, and it's not worth it because it affects you for the rest of your life. And my son knew that, and he didn't want to be addicted. I don't know if there's a silver lining in my story, because I have to live every day without my son, and that's the hardest thing to do. You're doing good, but if I can save one child, then it makes his story worth it.
And we're back with Carolyn Miele. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Jim.
Extremely brave of you to come on here, and such a touching piece that you did. And so important, I think, to get the message out there. You're a midwife. You've been around here forever. You've delivered so many children. Mm-hmm. And you're a normal parent that just lives a normal life. And I've known your family, and usually in a good way we spend time together. And I think it's important to understand that it does not heroin does not discriminate against anybody or anything. And I'll let you talk a little bit from there.
That's true. It doesn't. It affects so many families of all walks of life, and unfortunately, it has affected my family and my children. And my son Zachary passed away in February of a drug overdose, as you could tell from the video. And it's affected all of my children, and I have to watch them grieve. And I'm just trying to, raise awareness so that no other parents have to feel what I feel every day, and that we don't have to continue to watch all these kids die in our community.
What advice would you give to parents as far as watching for signs, or advice to give to parents if they do have children with addiction problems?
To get them help. And the thing is that heroin is so addictive that the first time they use, they become addicted, and it's not something that they can just go and get counseling for. They need rehab for that. And somebody that uses heroin and becomes addicted to heroin is going to end up in jail, or they're going to die. And that's the problem with it. It's not just like smoking pot or using cocaine, or not that those things are good, they're not, but heroin is a different kind of drug, and people need to realize that.
And the dealers have designed it to be that addictive and to become
That's right.
more addictive. And I don't think people in the public understand that no matter what you do, the addiction overpowers no matter how loving that child is or that person.
Exactly.
The addiction overpowers it. And you and I have talked, and one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is that you need to be hard as a parent, and you need to force the issue. And
That's right.
Sometimes they're better off if they end up in jail.
Yes, exactly.
And why don't you talk a little bit about, however you feel comfortable, about some of the signs you saw and you knew there was a problem. And
well, Zachary, started out using marijuana in high school, and some of those signs were just that he wasn't doing well. He was hanging out with the wrong group of kids. A couple months before he was to graduate, he decided he was going to drop out. And then he knew that he made the wrong decision, so he went back to school and got, his diploma. And he would be, back and forth with that kind of stuff and got, jobs here and there. But then in 2012, he started using heroin, and he used heroin for 11 months. And some of those signs were that he was nodding off,
And incidentally, he was usually a high-energy kid.
Right,
So
exactly.
just to
Yeah,
interject there,
and he
wasn't
was
the kind of...
no, and he had a great personality. He was very loving. He was very emotional. So this wasn't like him at all. So you have to look at things like, things that I didn't realize at first were spoons were missing from my house. He wasn't keeping a job that he was going to get drug tested at, and those are some things that you need to be, parents need to be aware of. Then the long sleeve shirts, in the middle of summer.
And I've heard that from other parents.
Yes.
They've made mention to that, Jim. When it's 100 degrees and there's long sleeve shirts on, no matter how safe you think you are from that problem.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So Zachary used heroin probably for about 11 months, and, I worried every day I was going to get a phone call that I lost my son. And I tried to kick him out of the house, thinking that was, going to be the tough love, that's something that was going to work, and that didn't work. And so finally I had him arrested and got him into rehab. And that is what worked.
And the toughest thing you probably ever did as a parent to that point.
Right, yes. But then he got on methadone and was clean for almost 3 years before he overdosed. Now I have to live without him.
I understand. And I don't know any way to put it, that heroin's a death sentence.
It is a death sentence.
And it just seems like your son made every effort, and I've talked with people that he did all the right things. And
he did. And he would research it. He researched it. He researched detoxing. He researched how to stay clean. He researched everything about it. He would say, "Mom, look at this page. Look at this, what I looked up." And, he didn't want this. He didn't want to be addicted. And that's what people need to understand. Once you start this drug, you're addicted. And this is what is so different about this.
And I think that's important. And we've talked about it and written about it, that there's a misunderstanding out there about the drug user, the addicted individual to heroin, is completely different than the criminal element that is pushing the drug, that is dealing the drug. And they have to be viewed as being sick and having an illness. Not that they aren't forced to doing criminal activity, to stealing. I mean, I'm sure we could tell stories that they steal from their family usually. But you cannot view somebody that has a heroin addiction or an opioid addiction as anything else than they have an illness and a sickness, because it overwhelms them. They cannot think. They cannot make rational decisions.
Because
Mr.
they have
Kiessling,
to
do you want
have
to
the
say
drug.
anything about that? Because
it's
and I know that's where you came from, where you wanted to declare it a homicide from the drug dealers, because it's the general public has got to understand that a heroin addict has such a severe addiction and a problem that they can't run away from it. They can't get away from it. And the users aren't the criminal element that you wanted prosecuted for homicide. And I'll let you jump in on that a little.
It's clearly, when we investigate deaths, we have to make a decision as to whether it's an accidental death, a natural death, homicide, suicide, or undetermined. Those are the only 5 selections we have on a death certificate. My feeling is, and after looking at years of deaths and talking with coroners and legal people, we're using homicide as a manner of death for drug deaths that are isolated to heroin, because it's an illegal activity. Someone illegally sold heroin to a person and they died as a consequence. So it's a death of an individual at the hands of another. If someone goes out here and drives a car under the influence of alcohol and kills someone, they get charged with vehicular homicide. So my feeling is, why are we calling these accidents? They're not accidents. Drug dealers are causing deaths in our communities, and if the law enforcement and district attorney's office can, find out who that person is, they would then be charged with drug delivery resulting in death. As District Attorney, Linhart has already addressed on your show, I believe it's difficult sometimes to prove that, and to prosecute those cases. But
And let me say, and I know your decision and us talking about it isn't intended to be a political football. We completely understand, and I know you understand we're law enforcement and we're the DA, so it isn't intended.
Correct.
I just wanted us to explain the view and why we have to look at it. That heroin, your son, when he used heroin, there was nothing that could keep it from him.
Right.
And
I think that people severely underestimate the power of a heroin addiction. I think that there's an idea that you can become addicted the first time. I think people honestly think that that's an over-exaggeration, and it's really not. And I really think that people need to make that very clear to their friends, to their family, to their loved ones, because it really only does take one time. It's what makes it different from pot or cocaine or any other drug, is that, or even the prescription opioids. That's what makes it separate. That's what makes it so much more dangerous, is it can literally be the first time you do it, you develop an addiction. And we've all seen it just doesn't end well. There's no way for it to end well.
Right.
and back to you, and I appreciate. I can't imagine what you've gone through, point blank. But is there anything you've covered a lot. Is there anything you would like to add as far as, for the person out there that might think they don't have a problem and it won't happen to my kid, is there something you can add or talk to about that a little bit?
Well, one thing I did want to say too is that the drug dealers give heroin away. They give it away
to get them hooked.
To get them hooked, so that they come back. So I didn't want to point that out, but I just think that we need to educate kids at a young age how deadly this is. We need to get it, the word out there in that way, starting at a young age. And I just
It's and your son had problems and issues, but I think Steph hit the point. You can bounce back from all the other ones.
yeah.
The pot.
Oh yeah. I mean, Zachary was clean for 3 years, and I'll never know the reason why he chose to use again. But people are clean. You read stories about that all the time, about how people are clean for so many years and then they use again. That's what I mean. It's just never. You just never know when you're dealing with a heroin addiction.
Steph, do you have anything?
I really want to thank you for telling your story. I can't imagine having the guts to do that. I know it's got to be difficult every time that you talk about it. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I think that getting your story out there will probably be more helpful than anything else that we can say, because you are your average everyday family. And heroin, we've all learned, has no socioeconomic
Boundaries.
Boundaries. That it affects everyone, every race, every religion, every income. Everyone's being affected by this, and you telling your story, if it helps one family, then that's all we need.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Coroner Kiessling, we'll get to some of the other issues another visit, and
Thank you.
And the life flight thing, I thank you for that, because I know you work a full-time job and then volunteer.
Yeah.
You know, that's a tough. Carolyn, I'll pray for you. Continue
Thank
to
you,
have
Jim.
been, and I think what Steph said, and I know you've probably already affected more than one person, so that you can feel good about.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
And we'll be right back after a commercial break.
Over 30 years, one family of dealerships has grown to include 14 brands at 8 locations, on an unyielding commitment to hometown values, and unrivaled service, selection, and customer satisfaction. For 30 years. Fairfield. For fair deals. You're gonna love us.
And we're back over at my comfortable confines of my Webb Weekly offices, and that was probably one of the toughest things we've done since we've been doing it.
Absolutely,
I take
yeah.
that back. That was by far the toughest thing we've done.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've known Carolyn a long time, and I just I can't thank her and admire her for trying to make a positive and make a statement and change what's going on out there with folks.
Yeah, for sure. Everything that she's been through, it breaks my heart. But I admire her so much for having the courage to continue to tell her story. You know, it's gotta tear things open every time she does it. So
Well, and unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of good usually comes out of tragedy when you have somebody like that that'll champion a cause. And I know her passion. You can feel her passion.
Yeah.
And it's just a tough situation. So we're going to wrap today's show up. Juliana actually has the week off. She has
Yes.
a better social schedule than I do.
She
and
does.
she has a lot going on. And we're going to come back next week. And I know she's tied in with your witches.
yes, we'll have our donation ready for laps from the Witches contest. Again, every entry that we get, we're going to donate $1 to laps, and Jimmy's usually nice enough to throw in a little bonus for them. So we're gonna send Juliana down the street, and she's going to give them the donation, but also take a tour of the laps facility and see what's going on there. So.
Yeah, so Juliana will be back on the beat next week, so to speak. And how many cats do you think we should bring back to Webb Weekly from Laps?
All of them. We can bring back all of the cats.
How about no dogs there though, is there?
No.
Well, I'm a dog person.
I know, but I'm a cat person.
Oh, jeez. So, well, anyway, Steph, good job today dealing with a tough situation. And one thing I can say, it doesn't matter if it's the debate that's going on in the election process. There's always going to be problems in our country, but here's the key. We need to stick together no matter the issue, whether it's heroin, whether it's picking a president. We need to stick together as the American people, and we need to fight for what's right and try to do the best job we can together. And God bless America.